Go through the process of changing out a motor system. This will be a 110 volt motor system. Pretty much applies to any motor system in a roll shade. Purpose for doing this: if you have a replacement motor, defective motor perhaps, you need to replace it with another motor. Maybe if there's a change in motor type that's being utilized, something of that nature. But this is really just a matter of exchanging one motor for another and going through the process of how we go and do that. It's a lot of fun, so let's have a blast, huh? All right, let's do it. Okay, so this is a shade that I'm going to pretend I took down out of the brackets. It's just sitting here ready for me to do my thing. What I want to do first is, again, make sure you have a wet rag, clean with some soap on it, hand soap, okay, and have it damp, good and damp. Keep your fingers clean. Keep the fingerprints off the fabric. This is white, so it's important that I do that, especially. We're then going to roll the fabric off the tube. I'm going to roll the fabric this way. I'm then going to re-roll it onto the hem bar. So I'm just transitioning or transferring the fabric from the roll tube onto the hem bar, which is the weighted bar at the bottom. And this gets to going pretty good here once I get on a roll. The motor cord tends to get a little twisted up at times. If so, just kind of kick it to the side. And if the shade is fairly short, you'll get through this process rather quickly. If it's quite long, it'll take you a little bit longer. Okay, now we want to expose the roll tube. Reason for that is we want to remove what we call the drive hub or set screw here in the drive hub. What this screw does is it keeps the motor from falling out the end of the roll tube during transportation, during installation, whatever it may be. So very important that you put the screw back. Let's not forget that at the end. I'll make sure we don't. Normally this screw is going to be exposed on this portion of the tube and the fabric will not be covering it. In this case, the fabric was cut out to expose the tube because it was underneath the fabric, but typically that screw will be showing somewhere where the fabric is not. So you want to look for that anywhere from about 27, 28 inches down from the end of the tube. Look for this screw. There's only one, so it's pretty easy to identify, and we just want to take it out. Once we've removed this screw, we can now remove the motor from the tube partially. We can't remove it completely from the tube, reason being there is a crown or an end cap on the end of the roll tube. You're going to want to remove those 3 screws that hold that crown into the roll tube. Without removing the crown, you're not going to remove the motor. And I'll show you why in just a second. We have the 3 screws out. I can then proceed with pulling the motor system all the way out. You may just want to give it a little bit of a bump, okay, to get that to break loose. Reason being, this is the drive hub that set screw went into. You're not going to be able to get this motor system out without this crown coming with it because of the drive hub on the end. Now that we have the existing motor out, what we want to do is we want to transfer the 3 components on this motor over to the other motor that we're going to slide back into the shade system. So first thing first, let's remove the clip for the drive hub. Slides right off. We're then going to remove the crown. Excuse me. Item number 2, we're going to remove a spacer ring. Not always there. Sometimes you will find a spacer ring. Make sure you do not forget to remove that because you're going to need that. We're going to set this other motor system aside. We're going to move on to the replacement motor system that I have here. First thing first, I'm going to slide my spacer ring back on. You'll notice that there's a keyway or a gap in the spacer ring. Make sure that this keyway or this gap goes around this key on the motor head. Okay, make sure that it goes around that key on the motor head and slides up tight to the end of the motor. The crown, slide it back on. You can leave it somewhere in the middle. Drive hub and the clip for the drive hub, like that. Okay, so this motor system is now ready to be installed. Make sure you line up your keyways with your keys in the extrusion of the tube. slide it in. When it comes to the crown, pay attention to the 3 screw holes in the crown. Line those up with the 3 portions of the tube extrusion where you can see the screws are going into the tube here. So you want to make sure that these are lined up so that when you put your screws back in, they're grabbing that portion of the tube that they're designed to grab. And you can just kind of press it in. Once you screw it in, it'll suck it right in there. The next and last part of this is make sure that you've identified the keyway on the crown. That's the indentation for this key to slide into. Many times it's marked with a silver mark, sometimes it's not. If it's not, just look for it by turning the crown and finding the indentation that this keyway is going to slide into. I have found it, so I'm going to slide it. I'm going to get it lined up. Make sure that your spacer ring is still where it should be. And then I'm going to just slide it right in here. Let me just get it lined up a little bit better. Don't force it. If it doesn't want to go, you don't have it lined up properly. There it goes. Okay, now it's back in. Double check to make sure that your spacer ring gap, okay, is around the key on the motor collar so that everything's nice and tight here. Everything fits nice and tight. I take that back. Let's pull this back out. My fault. I forgot to put the screws in. Let's go back and get these 3 screws in. We're going to need these. So once we get these 3 screws back in here, I'm just going to do a little bit at a time. This cap didn't go on flush, so I'm just going to kind of circle around. I'm going to do an initial semi-tight installation, and then I'm going to circle around and tighten them all up real nice and tight here. Suck that thing up there. Okay, so let's just kind of go back around. And make sure that they're flush. Make sure that they are not sticking out past the surface of the crown. Make sure you feel, and make sure that they are all below the surface area of that crown. That means that they're in all the way. And I'm going to go back to my little mark here. I'm going to go back to lining up my key in the mark. Again, I'm just going to fine tune where it goes here so it slides in easily, so I don't have to force it. Now, everything's nice and flush, everything's nice and tight, spacer ring is where it should be. Last and final step, let's not forget the drive hub retaining screw. Hold the end of the motor head in towards the tube so that everything is nice and tight. As you put the screw in, okay, and just like that, you just replaced a motor. Clean your hands. We're going back to touching the fabric. We're just going to roll this right back onto the roll tube from the hem bar. As you can see, this process goes rather quickly. This will get twisted up a little bit. Just untwist it as you go. And just like that, we have replaced a motor. Now you're going to have to start from scratch on the addressing of the motor to the transmitter, setting the limits, all of that fun stuff, because essentially we're starting with a new motor that has no memory in it whatsoever. So you're going to have to go through that process. But at this point in time, we just have successfully replaced a motor system in a 110 volt Intelli-Shade system. All right, my work's done for the day. Hopefully that goes smoothly for you, and good luck. Thank you.